Hi everybody, and very glad you could join us today, and to those that watch the video later, it's great that you're with us and watching. Cara, you've made my job so much easier. I just have to thank you hugely. So Cara gave a little taste about the range of artists that took part. So we're very lucky on this programme to work with an incredible curator, James Stockdale, who's with us today, and Sally, who works at the museum and is from worked at the archives for I think 6 years before, so has a lot of knowledge and experience about how the archive functions and works. It was a great help to us while it was closed in lockdown earlier this year. And we also work with the community engagement lead, Maria, who's been invaluable and connected with all the artists. So we've had this really rich experience online, which wasn't the intention. We tried to run this course last year, and obviously due to COVID-19, we made a decision to kind of delay things until they were hopefully opening up more. So the course that we're running this autumn, that starts in September and runs to the end of November, if lockdown restrictions are lifted and continue to stay lifted, will be as much as they can face to face, 1 day a week. And I'm going to share a screen shortly and show you it's a structure of each day. It might change depending on the weather. So if it's raining heavily, you might not do a tour around the site. And if we can have a visiting speaker on a certain date, then I'll shift something to something else to try and get as much contact with people and experience and expertise as we can. We're in a very lucky position in that the museum is run by a team of extremely enthusiastic, passionate people who went out of their way to support the artists who were equally passionate and enthusiastic and very kind of ambitious in their ideas. So Outside In specialises in person-centred courses, and it's really about whichever artists apply and what their interests are, their research interests, their practice and their processes that I will facilitate and work with the curatorial team with. This has two elements to the course. One is about researching the collection, the objects that are on display and the objects within the collection. And now we'll hopefully have access to being on site. That will be a lot clearer, a kind of invitation, because you'd be able to be on site to experience and have a kind of physical relationship to the objects. And that will, I think, influence the artists in terms of what they respond to physically, as well as in terms of the ideas. And secondly, that part of the course will be about arts practice and development towards an exhibition that's due to launch next May 2022. So artists are invited to submit a proposal for a piece of artwork that would be in the museum on site, providing the scale is, it's not a large exhibition space, but it's a great invitation for artists to make work for a site-specific museum while it's open. And there's also an invitation for artists to make work that could be the same or different for a digital exhibition that's due to open next January 2022. So there's part research and there's part creative practice. So there should be a lovely mix in the day. So I'm going to just share a screen and I'll answer any questions you've got, as I'm sure Jane and Kate will. So Jane's already talked about the theme. So we're hoping, in fact, on my timeline, it's 10:30 to 3:30 each week. So that's so artists can come from 10:30 and be ready to start at 11 in the museum. So there's half an hour kind of meet and greet, connect, leave any materials that we don't need in a kind of meeting space that we've got, and then come on site into the museum from 11 o'clock starts. So there are themes that Jane's already been through. What I would add to it is this idea about thinking about the museum as a space for site-specific artwork is also partly what we're looking at, and the understanding of curating within that space. So Jane's mentions quite a bit of this already, but the idea is we're welcoming artists into the museum, and that's a space that will be booked for the use of the artists for an hour and a half just to be in the museum without without anyone else visiting. So that's very special in itself. An opportunity to handle museum objects and learn more about handling if people haven't had that experience before. The idea of accessing the archives is also to hopefully be on site at the archives and have already honed down an idea of research, which Cara mentioned is part of the journey that was hard for artists when they couldn't get access to actually physically in the museum. It should make more sense this time to focus on research earlier and then have more time to really go into a subject area and might help, I think. We are interested also in the landscape of where the museum and the hospital sits, and as James mentioned, the museum's also about other sites around Yorkshire. We're interested in visiting artists, so hopefully Cara can come and visit and share her experience and also her artistic proposals towards the exhibition. We're interested in hearing from practitioners and to connect artists that have been through the first course to meet the artists on the second course and to form some kind of connection and hopefully collaboration towards the exhibition. We'd like to hopefully arrange a visit to the art house in the centre of Wakefield, which is a wonderful space that I've had the privilege of visiting. And then to focus on supporting artists with their proposals and for their artworks towards the exhibition, and to have a chance to kind of pitch and present to Jane, the curator, and also to prepare research presentations. So the idea is that artists share their research with the curatorial team and hopefully with curious minds who are linked to the museum and the NHS and staff from outside in. So it's a kind of safe, invited audience that come to listen to what artists have learned. But there's also this wonderful opportunity to share research on a microsite, so on part of the website that Outside In have that's dedicated to this project and programme. Artists can share their journey, they could have a blog, they don't have to, but there are opportunities to kind of share your learning process, your art, your vision in terms of your arts development towards the exhibition in a more public way if you're interested in that. So the structure of each week is from 10:30 to arrive ready for an 11 o'clock start, to have a curatorial talk in the museum unless we're off site, to identify objects or research themes that interest you in the morning or kind of by midday, and then in the afternoon to have a space for creative practice on site, to talk, maybe to make, depending on what your practice is, but to have a difference between research and then practice in the afternoon. There's also an offer of mentoring, which would be with me on Zoom, organised at a time that works for the artists. And there's a suggestion of every 2 weeks, with also support towards preparing a presentation and having a chance to run through it and practice in advance. We'll share this with you, this outline. So if you want a copy of this, we can share it through Kate, can email it to you. So we'd like artists to record their research in whatever format works. So Cara talks about writing, and Cara's wonderful at writing. If writing doesn't work for you, you can also use audio recording or video recording, or get some help with transcribing if necessary. So there's no requirement around a written format for any part of this course. And equally, we can share some references. If there has been a presentation that Jane shares, we'll have that available for you to be able to look at a later date as well. We really want to encourage artists to identify something that really fascinates them, because it's all really about the artists, their approach, their fascination, their research and their practice. We have a kind of timeline which we'll share about when work would be ready to submit, and also ideas about the artwork. So artworks don't need to be made by the end of November, but they do need to have a plan, a proposal of what that artwork would be, so we know it would fit in with the museum space and the collection. I think I'm going to stop sharing this screen now. So things to think about are, yes, can you get to Wakefield by any means? I appreciate some people might travel a longer way than others to get there. I I'm based in London, but I used to work and study in Yorkshire, so I'm very excited at spending part of my week in Yorkshire each week, which is a great bonus. And I think if you're looking for a kind of more intimate experience of working with a collection and working with your practice, and also developing how to propose work for a museum or exhibition setting, I think it'd be a great course. And what you have to bear in mind is, although it's called a patient artwork course, a lot of the objects are to do with the history of the Stanley Royd and of the collection. So there is a real mixture. It's not a huge amount of fine art collection in the museum, but we're inviting artists to come in and make fine artwork. So there is a balance between that.